Hello, and welcome back. Today, we're going to work on something a little bit different. We are not going to be working directly on music, but we're going to be working on things related to getting back into school, what to look for, what to check on, and then basically just kind of a checklist to make sure that everything's squared away. First order of business, looking at rentals. If you are looking to get into playing cello and you want to start a rental, there's definitely some interesting things to consider. Price point is going to be one of the biggest things that is on most people's minds. That is a double-edged sword in a couple of different ways. You can, the same thing with, the $60 violins off of Amazon. That qualifies as a violin, but there are plenty of what my old violin building teacher used to call CSOs, cello-shaped objects. They're the size, they're the rough shape, they're the general layout, they're the general color of a cello, but they are far and away from being a real instrument. Thankfully, those are not terribly common, but you're going to get, in broad strokes, what you pay for. So you don't necessarily have to go out and rent a $10,000 cello to be able to start playing. However, flip side, I would not rent a $199.99 instrument or buy one, God forbid, to begin playing. You will find the lower dollar amount, the harder it is to play the instrument well. The nicer the instrument, the easier it is to play well, which is going to be a huge thing, especially when you're starting out. So if you're looking at cello rentals, definitely don't try to skimp on what you can afford. That would not be the place to cut costs. If you take any piece of advice, please listen to that one. So when you're looking at cello rentals, you are not just looking at this. It is not going to be just the instrument. If you are looking at rentals, you're going to want to double check what the materials are. So starting from the top, usually your neck is going to be maple, your sides and your back of your instrument are going to be maple, your top is going to be spruce, all of your fittings are going to be ebony, so normally your pegs, your fingerboard, your nut, your tailpiece is usually going to be ebony on student instruments. Bridge is 9 times out of 10 rock maple, which is very, very hard. It stands up to the compressive load very well. And then your end pin down here is usually going to be steel. There's a lot of variability within instruments and price brackets dealing with all of that. The narrower the grain on the top, so the closer the lines running up and down the instrument are, the closer they are together, usually the better the top will sound. And that will definitely affect your instrument sound. On your back, and I'll have some close-ups later, you have maple. The radial lines are running top to bottom. My apologies. I was looking, the flaming is running sideways on these. The back of my instrument has flaming, some not a lot. This is not exactly a very expensive instrument. To be completely upfront, I paid $2,500 for this in 2007. Yeah, 2007, it was $2,500. So this one has significantly more pronounced flaming on the ribs, which is going to be nice. You can also see that there are some wear marks on the sides of the instrument, on the top and the back plates, where the instrument lays when it is sitting on the side. On some nicer instruments, you will actually have a block of ebony or maple there, called opera blocks, to help keep the top and the back plate from getting chewed up as it gets set on the ground. There are some instruments that are manufactured with plywood tops and backs. They can be okay 9 times out of 10, however, you're going to want to hazard towards solid wood tops and backs. If you are in a bind financially, or if availability is an issue, I live in southeastern Colorado. The nearest music store is about 90 miles away. the nearest good music store is about 160. And then, yeah, so it's kind of a desert out here. So usually you're having to make a dedicated trip to go find instruments. These days, to be perfectly honest, I do not know what rentals run. But when you are looking for a rental, you are going to want to make sure that your pegs all turn easily, which is going to be usually problematic because this is the rough tuning on the instrument. You're going to want to make sure that your pegs turn easily. The problem is then you're going to have to retune the instrument. But once you double check that, or if you ask about it, definitely something to keep in mind. If you have fine tuners on the bridge or on the tailpiece, make sure that these turn freely. Some of them that I've run across are very hard to turn, and it is very hard to get the instrument in tune, which makes playability that much rougher. Another thing to keep in mind, and you can see a little bit of mine, a little bit of warpage on mine, but make sure that there's no real good way to hold this. Make sure that the bridge is flat, and then the back you are going to want at a 90-degree angle to the top. As you can see, there's a bit of a curve to mine. As I've been adjusting the tuning as the strings get slacker, I've been taking more tension up with the fine tuners, which has led to it curving backwards. This is right at the edge of what I would accept in terms of a rental. I would probably look at a different instrument or try to have them recut a new bridge. I need to recut my new bridge and then get it fitted, but that takes time. If you're doing it frequently, if you can probably cut and fit a bridge in an hour or two. I have not cut many cello bridges. It takes me a bit longer. And this is definitely going to be something that you do not do at home. This is a professional job shop. This is something for somebody who knows what they're doing. So make sure that the bridge is flat. Make sure that the bridge back is at a 90-degree angle to the top plate. Next thing that you're going to want to look for is going to be making sure that there's no cracks or separated seams. So I'm just going to I'm actually going to take my in pin out so that I can set it on my leg without stabbing myself. So instruments built in this style, guitars do have them, but they don't always function the same way. Have the purfling around the outer edge, which is this double line of inlaid wood that generally it is a decorative item as well as having some function as helping prevent cracks. That is something that you're going to want to double check and make sure is inlaid instead of just painted on. You're going to have to look closely, and what you're going to want to see is the two black lines, and then there's a lighter color in between them. If you notice the grain following the outline of that purfling, that is going to be most likely inlaid purfling. If you see the two lines, but then you see the grain lines from the top itself running through those black lines and continuing in within the purfling, that is most likely going to be painted on. You'll notice that more along the downward sides here, so that you'll notice these lines from here running through the purfling, then it's painted on. If you see the lines and then they stop and then they kind of run this way, that is going to be inlaid, and that is going to be significantly better. Another thing to keep in mind is you're looking for cracks. They should be fairly obvious. What you're going to want to do is actually have a light source off to the side, and then you're going to want to look across the top in what's called a raking light. That's used a lot during the actual carving of the instruments as well, to make sure that there's no extra bumps and everything's nice and smooth instead of lumpy as it goes. But that'll also help you find small hairline cracks across the top, across the back, across the ribs, just to make sure that they don't turn into a problem later on down the road. The other thing that you will want to do on anything that you're looking to rent is going to be see if there's any separated seams, any pop seams. So you can take a finger and lightly tap, well, light to medium tap, along where that purfling is, where that inlaid line of wood is. And you're going to be listening to see if it changes tone. So, it doesn't seem like I have any open seams on there. Okay, so I have an open seam down here. So you'll notice the sound from here. So there is a block right down here. So this is obviously, this is going to be a different tone, but the difference from there to here, you hear how it almost sounds like it's like a door flapping or something along those lines? That means that the glue seam in between this back plate and the side rib is separated a little bit. That one is really bad. That actually... I need to address that one. Congratulations, you got open seams, Colin. So that kind of rattling sound compared to that nice solid sound, that is the differentiation you're looking for. So the other thing you're going to want to keep in mind is you've got blocks here, 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 and here. So don't worry about running across a block. That is obviously going to change because there's more glue area. So the sound difference between and is not that big of a deal. However, the sound difference between and, that's what you're going to be looking for. There's a slight difference when you hit these smaller blocks in the corner. But again, you can kind of hear the difference there. So make sure that none of your seams are open. If they are, make sure that the shop knows about it, or see if you can rent something else. Personal preference is going to play a huge, huge part in this. And so if you find something you like, and there's got an open seam to it, that isn't necessarily a bad thing. As you can tell, I still play on mine. I didn't realize that I had an open seam until I went, oh, hey, whoops. But it can affect sound if it's a large enough open seam. So if you have an entire bout open, if you've got like this entire chunk right here open from this block down to your bottom block, at certain frequencies, and it's going to be different for every instrument depending on strings, depending on how hard you're playing, depending on what you're playing, like what register, it can actually set up a vibration within the top and basically just flutter your top against your sides, and you get a really bad buzzing to it. So if there's a little bit of an open seam, kind of like I've got back here, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It does need to be addressed. If you've got an entire open seam and it sounds like a screen door flapping in the wind, that's going to be problematic. That is going to be another thing that you leave to a professional shop. Do not attempt to fix that on your own. I have had to work on instruments that somebody thought that they could save some money and do it with wood glue. These joints are actually sealed with hide glue or fish glue, which are both rendered out of animal products. Hide glue is usually rendered out of hides. Fish glue is usually made out of fish scales. And it is a medium tack, low strength glue, so that if there is a humidity change, this seam between here and here, or the back and your ribs, fails first, so you don't actually get a crack in your front plate or your back plate. Fixing a seam, the last time that I had it done was sitting at like $5 a clamp. So if they had to do 1, 2, and 3 clamps, that'd be a $15 fix. Whereas a crack in a top plate or a back plate usually starts at about $100 an inch. So if you've got a crack out of one of your F-holes and it's a 3-inch crack, you're looking at about $300 for that fix, as opposed to an 8-inch crack over here might only be $15 if it's in between the top plate and your ribs. So that open seam is a lot easier to fix when you have the proper glues and the proper tools to do it. So do not try to fix that yourself. Take that to somebody who knows what they're doing. They'll get it fixed with the right glue, right setup, right clamps. Don't have to worry about damage. And if you're renting, they probably either have an agreement with a repair shop or they do repairs in-house. And so you just go, hey, this has an open seam. They can take it, they can fix it, get you on your way. That's about all of the functional, like, wood stuff involved. Make sure that your bridge is straight. Make sure that it isn't curved, like mine. Make sure that the back edge is at a 90-degree angle with your top plate. Check around for cracks. Check around for open seams. Another big thing that you're going to look for is your strings. You're going to want to look for string wear up here at the nut, over the bridge, and where it connects to your tailpiece. So at the nut and at the bridge, you'll see the windings generally kind of start to pull apart. That is generally when the string is starting to get old. I haven't replaced these strings on my instrument entirely too long. So I've got a little bit of wear here, and I think my nut is doing all right, so I'm not terribly worried about that. This A string isn't terribly frayed, but it's something to pay attention to. Looking at where it connects with the tailpiece is going to be something slightly different. There's 2 different types of connections for the strings there. It's either going to be ball or it's going to be loop. This particular tailpiece is ball, so it's got 2 little fingers coming up from the fine tuner that hooks around the ball, goes from there. Your loop connectors are usually more of a violin thing, violin viola, but it's only got a single, and you actually take that ball out of the string, pardon me, loop the loop around the finger, and then you can tighten it down that way. So open seams, no cracks, double check your strings, and then you should be good. Your tailpiece, if you find one with a carbon fiber end pin, significantly better. Steel, perfectly acceptable. If your tailpiece is polycarbonate or carbon fiber or something along those lines, going to be a lot better. Ebony is the standard, but I prefer the ultralight, like thermoplastic tailpieces. A, because they've got built-in tuners that are very decent, and B, because it reduces the amount of weight on the instrument to get it up to vibrating, and therefore it takes less energy to play. You can play louder, there's not as much decay. Different materials and different weights are going to affect how the instrument sounds. I have found in my own personal experience, a lighter tailpiece, or a lighter end pin and a lighter tailpiece generally helps open the instrument up more, and helps it play better, more responsive, thereby playing faster, and generally have a nicer tone to it. The other thing that you will find when it comes to instrument tone or timbre, your strings are going to play an absolutely massive role in how the instrument sounds. I have taken an old set of good strings that I've had on mine. I was running Heliocores, and I put it onto a buddy's rental. He was running a music program there in central-ish Colorado. It's on the I-25 corridor. And so I put a heavily used, but good set of strings on a student instrument, and then I swapped my carbon fiber end pin out for the steel one that he had because it was the same diameter. And he was used to how the instrument sounded, and I made those 2 simple swaps, and he goes, that sounds like a completely different instrument. So carbon fiber end pins, if you can find one with it, and you like the instrument, by all means use it. I wouldn't recommend trying to swap end pins, because that is going to be, unless you're looking at buying or that kind of a thing, then you might want to look at swapping end pins, having that done by a professional. If you're renting, I can't recommend that in good faith. However, swapping your strings, easiest way to get an instrument to open up and sound better. When it comes to strings, if you see any fraying at the nut or at the bridge, definitely look at having them replaced. You can find how to do that online. It's very, very simple. If you're not comfortable with that, have them do it at the shop. Either you can buy new strings through them, or you can do a little bit of research online. Strings are highly personal, but generally, again, the more you pay, the better the results. I generally run with either Rosin or Heliocores. Those are going to be the two that I normally recommend. Dario also has some good soloist ones. They're going to also be a pretty penny, but again, get what you pay for. So that is going to be the instrument, the strings. Yeah, that's all that I would immediately be looking for. The next thing that I'm going to recommend taking a look at when it comes to... also, there's a big difference weight-wise between carbon fiber end pins, because you've got solid ones, like I have, and then there are hollow carbon fiber end pins, which are even lighter. It's on par weight-wise with like an archery arrow. Some of the bigger ones for like hunting compound bows, they are wickedly light. And when you transfer from a steel to a carbon fiber of any stripe, it is going to be a massive difference. And then if you go from a steel to like a hollow carbon fiber, it is going to be worlds different. So next thing, when it comes to making music on this instrument, is going to be bows. You are going to want to check and see, how much hair is there and if it needs replaced. Usually you can tell if you're picking up like a rental instrument, you're probably not going to have a pick of bows. It is probably going to come in a bag or a hard case. It is going to come with a bow. It is going to have the instrument. You might have a tail strap. You might have some rosin. You might have a tuner, but usually not. So those are going to be things that you're going to want to pick up on your own. Bows, obviously, make sure when you sight down them that they are straight. This one is straight. You're going to want to look at the top end. Future reference, do not touch the hair. Your hand oils can get on it and degrade the hair, leading to the hairs failing sooner and having to get rehaired faster. Plus, get your hand oils on the rosin on there. It makes it harder to play. It's just don't touch the hair. However, looking at the bow tip, make sure that the block isn't pulling out too far. Make sure that you don't have too many cut hairs sticking out. And then when you get down here, make sure that everything is nice and flat. I rehaired this one probably a year and a half ago. It is desperately in need of rehairing. I just have to go find my jig and make sure that all my equipment is still new and fresh. I'm probably just going to have to order new horsehair. But rehairing this is definitely going to be a professional job. The reason that I have the stuff to do a lot of this is I actually am working on getting my business up and running for building violins, then using that to expand into violas, and then later cellos. Cellos is what I really want to build down the road, but that's neither here nor there. So I've got a lot of stuff to do this on my own. Most people don't. A very few people have the actual training to be able to go and do this. When it comes to any repair or anything along those lines, please take it to a professional. You can learn to do it. I had to go to school for it. It took me 3 years. It's not arduous, but you have to learn through repetition and learn through lots of exposure to lots of different things. Working on one of these by yourself, you are most liable to just run into creating more problems than when you started. Please take it to a professional. Just please. But bows. Again, my apologies. It's kind of all over the place. I'm thinking about all of the different things that I look at when I'm looking at an instrument. So bows are going to be the next thing. Make sure that when you loosen the bow, you have a fair amount of slack. You can kind of watch that hair move back and forth. I have run across bows that when you loosen it all the way, you still have daylight in between the bow hair and the bow. Some people think that this is too loose when it comes to loosening tension on a bow. I want all of the tension out so I can keep the curve that is in it without having to worry about it. Some places say that is enough space in between, but that still has some tension on there, which over time will straighten out the bow, which leads to problems. Again, check the head, make sure there's not too many cut hairs sticking out. Check down here, make sure that you don't have any bald patches. And then this one is slightly different because I actually have it split. I've got black hair on one side, I've got white hair on the other. This is actually a little bit more of an advanced choice. If you look at bass bows, normally those are going to be black hair. It's a lot more aggressive, it's got a lot more grip to it. Normally when you look at violin bows, it is going to be white, which is going to be, after it gets bleached to make it a nice presentable color, it also tends to knock part of the more aggressive parts of the hair off so that it is a nicer, finer bow stroke. I think it's mainly for the visual aesthetics, but it does have a mechanical consequence in that it doesn't hold as much rosin, it isn't as aggressive in its grip, which on violins is a good thing. Those tiny strings, if you get real aggressive with them, if you play with black hair, you have to know what you're doing, otherwise it is going to be very grating. On a cello, sometimes you need that more aggressive stuff if you're playing some of the Russian composers. Most of your cello bows, though, are going to be white bow hair because it's kind of an industry standard. This one is slightly different. I did it how I wanted it when I redid my bow hair last time. And so I have more aggressive on one side and I have softer and finer on the other, so I can literally roll my bow to get more aggressive or roll my bow back to get less aggressive. It served me well. The other thing is to make sure that your wrap, I will send a picture of this a little bit later. Make sure that your thumb grip isn't too terribly worn out, because otherwise you'll be gripping the bow stick itself, which can be quite uncomfortable. I have seen and have personally taken the end screw out of here. Just be real careful when you do this, because if you drop this and it twists or falls through, it is going to be a nightmare getting it back flat. But what I have done in the past, which only do this if you feel comfortable, I've taken the screw out holding on to this, and then I've actually taken those squishies that you roll over pencils to give you a little bit more squish. I have rolled that back over this and then just put my bow back together. Let me make sure that I'm doing this properly and not just talking and screwing something up. So that when I am holding it, I have that squishy thing right here, but it doesn't affect the movement of the frog for the tensioning of the bow. That made my senior recital so much nicer. I was playing multiple hours a day, and I was just getting these really bad cramps in my fingers, and I was getting these super tender spots. And so I put the squishy on there, and oh man, it saved me. Yeah, more advanced stuff, but something else to keep in mind. Make sure that your screw tensions things nice and easy. Make sure that you can get to full tension and you're not like bottoming out travel. Make sure that there's not any gap between the bow stick and then the frog here in this channel. Make sure that it isn't like camming down kind of a thing. And that's generally what I look for in a bow overall. Another thing that you're going to look at if you're going to be renting is going to be bags or transport, I guess. If you have the option to get a hard case, do it. 110%. They are not exactly cheap. I would not get, again, a bottom dollar hard case if you have access to a good quality soft case. Usually your soft cases are going to be more like limited transport, taking it from home to rehearsal, taking it from home, maybe to school if you can put it in a locker or something like that. If it's in a soft case, you're not going to want to be transporting it a lot, because if it falls, if somebody bumps into it, that kind of thing, you don't have rigid protection for it. A lot of soft cases that are nicer have hard patches, which are going to be over where the end pin goes, over where the bridge is, just to prevent dings and breaks and that kind of stuff as best they can. But it doesn't prevent direct contact. It just is a layer of padding in most cases. However, a good soft case still outranks a cheap hard case. You're going to have better suspension, you're going to have better protection. When it comes to hard cases, you're probably still going to be looking at $300 to $400 on the bottom end. I haven't looked at this market in a long time, but I paid $649.99, my apologies, for my hard case in 2007, and I still have it. I've broken a couple of latches. I have worn a handle clean out on it, the side carry handle, but the wheels still work. Most of the latches still work, and it is still a solid hard case. So it is something that you can put some coin into and use as, I don't want to say an investment because you generally don't sell on hard cases, but it'll be something that can stick around if you take care of it for a long time. I've also covered mine in stickers and nobody's going to buy it. So, something else to keep in mind. You don't necessarily have to buy super top end. You don't need... The instruments that I have owned have not required something like a BAM. That is usually going to be top of the line, that kind of thing. Again, haven't checked into this market in a long time, but I know BAM cases can go for thousands of dollars, especially their carbon fibers. 9 times out of 10, if you're going to be spending that much money, I would look at spending thousands of dollars on the instrument and a couple $100 on the case. The second one that I would look at putting a fair bit of coin into would be the bow if you're looking at purchasing. I paid $1,000 for my bow. I paid $2,500 for my instrument. Originally, I was playing on a Coda bow, which was one of the first gens of carbon fiber bows to come out. That was actually a fairly decent one. I was very impressed. I played on it for a long time. The responsiveness through the bow from the instrument, so the feedback I was getting in my hand through the bow from the strings, was muted, but it was still there. And the other really nice thing about carbon fiber bows is they have significantly less propensity for adverse reactions to playing outside and that kind of a thing. So if it's humid and that kind of a deal, like my normal bow, if it's real humid, will not be able to come up to as high of tension. And so playing heavier stuff, my horsehair actually hits the back, the bow stick. You get this super crunchy, really not good, very bad, no good sound. My carbon fiber Coda bow didn't have that issue. So put some coin into, major investment is going to be the cello if you're looking at buying. Second highest investment is probably going to be either your hard case or your bow. I still would not pay, if you're going to be buying a good solid hardwood instrument that's got a little bit of age to it, and is in the $2,500 to $5,000 range, I would not pay less than $300 or $400 for a bow. I'd probably be looking at the $500 mark. Next thing that we need to talk about is going to be ancillary. So you're going to want rosin. You're going to want good rosin. You can get the $11.99 a cake stuff off of Amazon or through a lot of your supply, music supply, Southwest Strings, Met Music, those kind of places. If you're renting, that's acceptable. If you're looking at buying, I would recommend a good name brand. Unfortunately, the rosin that I used to get is no longer available. I was really bougie with mine. Really bougie with mine. And that stuff was $45 a cake. This is Kaplan Dark. As you can see, this is a relatively new cake. I think this was like low 20s, 100% full send. Highly recommended. The other thing to keep in mind when you get a fresh cake is it is fresh cast, fresh molded. If you use something to score the top and kind of break it up a little bit so that your horsehair has something to bite against, gonna be great. Not saying that I would recommend ever using the screw on the back end of your bow to be able to score this, because that is not what that is designed for, and that is highly against... wouldn't recommend it, but if you have a new cake and it's almost rehearsal time and you have to get your bow rosin, needs must. So rosin gonna be a thing. If you were renting some of the smaller cakes like this, going to be perfectly acceptable. It will get you up and running. And it will increase your friction between the bow and the string, help you play easier with less effort going into the instrument so that it isn't as physically taxing to play. And it also makes it easier for inflection, or not necessarily intonation, but inflection and phrasing. If you're looking at buying or have a little bit more money to put into things, get some better rosin, 110%. Next thing is going to be tuners. I am old school. My tuner is separate from my metronome. Both of them are Korg. I don't even think you can buy these anymore. Korg is still going to be a good brand. Read the instructions, figure out how to use it. If you buy the 2-in-1, so it's a tuner and a metronome, that's going to be less things to carry in your bag or in your case. Yeah, definitely a thing. I just got mine back when I was very strapped for cash in high school, and I was working a part-time job like a day and a half a week, and this was all I could afford. However, I have had this tuner entirely a lot longer than I would care to admit. It's 19 years that I've had this metronome. I loaned out that tuner when I was in college, and I never got it back, and I replaced it with one that was just like it. And that one is currently in another room. But yeah, I have had this metronome 19 years. Okay. Well, now that I've dated myself and made myself feel old and sad, next thing that you're going to want to look at is going to be cello straps. Let me see if I can get mine out without causing too much hate and discontent. Cello straps. Cello straps are a fun thing. 99 times out of 100, they are all black, all plastic. Everybody has the same one, and telling them apart is almost impossible. I ran across a couple people who had tied ribbons either around the strap or around the ring, or done something else, or like paint markered there so that it's different, so that they can run out, grab theirs, never have to worry about somebody taking theirs. The big things to look for when it comes to that, in my mind, is going to be metal hardware, good quality slider, which is your length adjustment, metal pad, your cup where your end pin goes, and then make sure that it's got some non-slip on the back, and just make sure that it's quality. These are not a high... You don't burn through them. Usually you buy one and you have it until you lose it or somebody steals it. Then you have to buy another. I took a different route because I was tired of people taking mine, and I made mine. So I have had... Apologies for the cat hair. I literally just picked this one up off the floor, however. So I made this back when I was in high school. No, I take that back. I made this one, yes, when I was in high school. It was after I got... It was tail end of my senior year. Somebody had borrowed my my other one, and it just disappeared. So I actually wound up making one. I was looking for black nylon, and then I found the rainbow, and I thought it was hilarious, and I knew that nobody else was going to steal mine. So I made this in 2008. I'm making myself feel old again. So if you want to make yours, you can make it however you want. I made this in the shop in like 10 minutes. This is a block of walnut. I used a 3/4 inch spade bit, drilled a hole after finding center and that kind of stuff. I put it off center, a little bit towards the tail end. I took the strap, I folded it over, I put 2 brass screws in, I put 2 brass screws in on the back, and then I had enough, I think I got like 3 feet. I had enough to go around a steel ring that I could fit around the leg of a chair, and then I cut the adjuster off of a backpack that I wasn't using anymore for the same width of nylon webbing, and then just sewed it in the back. Again, apologies for cat hair. But yeah, this is entirely bespoke, let's call it, mainly because it makes me giggle. And I've had this thing since 2008, the early part of 2008, and nobody's ever stolen it. Nobody's ever tried to walk off with it, and I have received many strange looks and comments on it. Mainly because I would stick this end in my back pocket and then walk wherever I needed to go for rehearsals and stuff. And so I would have a rainbow strap hanging out of my back pocket. Many strange looks. So we've got rosin, we've got tuners, and we've got... so tuners, just to touch on those one more time, you can get the really expensive ones. Don't necessarily need to. Metronomes, you can get the very expensive Dr. Beats. They are very handy. They have little sliders so that you can set it up for eighth notes or triplets or quarter notes or however, and you have little sliders to help you with whatever rhythm, pardon me, for whatever passage you're working on. But it's not, you don't necessarily need to have that. When it comes to tuners, there are clip-on microphones, so you can clip it directly to your bridge, and then you just plug the jack in so that the tuner can hear exactly what's going on. So it's not picking up everything ambiently, it's picking up what's coming in through the microphone. Very handy, and they're like $12 a piece for the clip-ons. I think cords are usually in the like $20 range. Maybe the combination tuner and metronome are like high 20s, low 30s. Whatever fits in your budget. Just go with a reputable brand. Don't get the cheapest stuff off of Amazon. Check your reviews. All the normal buying online precautions. Or if you're buying out of a store, double check with them, see what's going on. So we have this, rosin, tuner, metronome, bow, cello, to look for on the cello cases. Yeah, I think that's about it. We've gone through the instrument, we've gone through the bow, we've gone through the case, we've gone through the ancillaries. We should be all set. So, those are some things to look at, not only if you're looking to buy, but also if you're looking to rent. If you're in high school or elementary, you might not be looking at full-size instruments, you might be looking at fractional size. Those are going to have to be something that you get fitted and see, well, A, see what they have, and B, see if you can play like a full-size cello. If you're an adult getting into it, 9 times out of 10 you're looking at full-size. If you are more on the petite or smaller side, you might be looking at like a 3/4 or a 7/8. 3/4 are going to be a lot more common than 7/8. 7/8 are getting into rarefied territory, but they do exist. Usually that's not a mass market, that's somebody built that by hand, and you're going to be paying the price. But if a full size is just a little bit too big and you can't reach, or it's just too wide of a gap, you might look at something like that. So, yeah, that basically wraps it up. So hopefully that comes to help if you are looking at renting, or perhaps helping a child or a student rent, or if you are looking to move past the rental stage and into buying. I haven't really talked about too many prices except for what I personally have paid, just because I'm not in that particular market and I have not been up to date on those. But it's also going to vary wildly depending on where you are. So out here in southeastern Colorado, there's not much. But it'll be back in the East Coast, that kind of area, there's going to be a lot more things that are a lot more available within a reasonable driving distance, so you have a lot more to choose from. West Coast is going to be the same. So, yeah. Hopefully this helps, and if nothing else, we will catch you next time and we can go from there. Thank you very much. Have a good day.